20 years later it should still be able to buy the camel. In other words, this money should faithfully preserve my 1 month of sweat. And Sunnah money did that all through history. Now let me introduce you to something very sinister that occurred. In fact, it was more than something haram, it was riba. But the Prophet had said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, about the riba which would come with Dajjal. What did he say? He said that it will be as difficult to recognize it as it would be to recognize a black ant on a black stone on a dark night. I mean, you don't need a PhD from the University of New South Wales to recognize. The only man who can see that ant, the black ant, on the black stone, on the dark night, is the one who has some light. You don't need a PhD to understand that. Huh? Nobody else can recognize it. Nobody else, not even a PhD from Al-Azhar University. You cannot recognize it unless you have Noor. And guess what? It isn't sold in the stock market. Noor. يَهْدِ اللَّهُ لِنُورِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah guides to His Noor whomsoever Allah wishes to guide. Suddenly, strangely, something happened. Europe is empowered with a power which the rest of the world combined cannot match. If you think this happened by accident, you should go and buy a house in Disneyland. Yes, that's where you should go and live. Europe is empowered for the first time in its history with a power which the rest of the world combined cannot match. And Europe uses that power to attack the rest of the world and colonize it. If you think that happened by accident, go and live in Disneyland. When Europe colonized, it was something very sinister going on. It was made even more sinister because suddenly one day Europe started to withdraw. They call it decolonization. And as Europe decolonized, the natives now, they have something that they call, I don't know if you heard about it, independence. Huh? Independence. And they have a flag, and they have a national anthem, huh? And they have a hodgepodge of an army and so on. And then sometime in the middle of the night, they would have the lowering of the flag and the raising of the flag, and they'll be dancing and so on. And they say, we've got freedom. But the European will be hiding behind a mango tree and laughing his belly out. Look at these one-eyed fools. They think they have got freedom, that they drove Europe out. No. Europe withdrew for tactical and strategic reasons. But before Europe withdrew, decolonized, Europe planted some truly dangerous seeds. But the only way you could recognize those dangerous seeds is if you have Noor from Allah. Not just knowledge that you get from the books. That's important. Yes, that is important. But you need something more than that. The first seed that Europe planted, of course, I told you about it already in my lecture on Imam al-Mahdi and the return of the Khilafah. That it is in the essence of Islam that you must recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Al-Malik, the one who possesses Al-Mulk, sovereignty. That's the translation for Mulk, sovereignty. But now Europe leaves behind a dangerous seed called the modern secular state. And the modern secular state declares, we no longer recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Al-Malik. The state is now Al-Malik, sovereign. And that is shirk. And I explained to you the same thing about power, Al-Akbar, and the same thing about Al-Hakam, the one whose law is supreme. So go back to that lecture and you'll understand this. So this was the seed of shirk, political shirk, which was planted. How many Muslims saw it and recognized it? How many of our distinguished and learned ulama, for whom we have respect, we don't speak disrespectfully of them, not at all. How many of them recognized that this was shirk? We even had ulama in politics. Yeah, ulama in politics. We even had Islamic movements becoming a political party and fighting in elections like everybody else. Still going on now. Incapable of seeing the shirk of the modern secular state. I told you about my arguments with Taliban, and I couldn't succeed in getting Taliban and its ulama to understand this point. But the second seed that Europe planted before withdrawing was the seed of transformation of money. Money was no longer going to be sunnah money, money which had intrinsic value, but rather we now have a new kind of money. It's paper money, and it does not possess intrinsic value. The value of the money is outside of the money. And so now I'm paid my salary in paper. And I am told, Imran, this is very convenient. You can put it in your ass. You can slip it in easily in your wallet. Paper, huh? Very convenient. So I got my salary in paper. It could buy a camel. Took it home, gave it to my wife, put it away. 5 years later, take it out, can't buy a camel anymore, can only buy a donkey now. Did you hear that? Can only buy a donkey now. My 1 month of sweat is now reduced. Only 2 weeks have been kept in the money. And 2 weeks of my sweat has disappeared. Is this permissible in Islam? Allah speaks in the Quran in connection with a prophet whose name was Shu'aib radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Bismillahi awwaluhu wa akhiruh. My 1 month of sweat has now been reduced to 2 weeks. Okay? What does Allah say about this in the Quran? It's there in the Quran. It's there. But we don't notice it. The Prophet Shu'aib alayhi salam, and the market or the economy of the people of Shu'aib alayhi salam is a corrupted market. There's a lot of ripping off going on in this market. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to it in the Quran, and He declares 3 times in the Quran. Listen to the words. وَلَا تَبْخَسُ النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. Do not do this. My 1 month is now reduced to 2 weeks.